We have fun. We have fun.
I feel like so last week this time. Oh, we were here. Yes, last week this time we were here, but then we were in Galveston, and now we were hanging out last night. Now we're here, and then you're there, and we're
Yeah.
here. We're here. Hi, everyone.
Yes. We I want to thank you because I never got a chance to see Dionne Warwick, and when Sirius scheduled an interview with her last year, and we got a chance to talk to her for a minute, and she was in town in DC, so I went to see her, and she was there with her oldest son and her granddaughter, and it was a beautiful moment. She had a little bit of a cold. Her bass player couldn't make it from LA. He had been delayed, some kind of thing, so they had a replacement bass player, and he had a wonderful piano player, but it wasn't her normal guy. And so this time again, Sirius, she talked with Clay, and we couldn't fit our schedule to talk to her. Would have loved to talk to her again, but anyway, when one of your team was like, "Yo, we got 2 tickets to see Dionne Warwick at the Apollo," I was like, "What?" So, hey y'all, guess who went to the Apollo's theater last night and saw Dionne with both of her sons and her full complement, the musicians who traveled the world with her as she went through her entire life story and sang in between. It was the 2 of us. It was the most wonderful.
Just so you know, you're the only person I might leave my cave.
Oh, I'm clear.
It's not a cave. I don't
I'm
want
crystal clear.
I don't want to repeat my palace. You're the only person I would leave my palace for. So you said you want to go. I was like, not really, but
no,
okay.
not really. She did say not really, y'all. Yeah, for real. She said, nah, not really. But
it had nothing to do with Miss Dionne Warwick. It has everything to do with out in the streets on a Friday night.
That was
it was glorious. The Apollo Theater is about to be renovated as well. So I think it was the last event that will be there before they start tearing it down and building it back up. But it was lovely to see someone almost 85 years old hitting some notes. I said, okay, all right, ma'am. She was playing with us too, because she was like, and I said, okay.
Playing. I cannot. And y'all, look, I mean, I know you said it wasn't about her, but that's your true homie for real. Orange. I mean, East Orange.
East Orange. East Orange. Oranges are all different.
That's right. I know better than that. East Orange.
Home of John Amos. Whitney.
How about that? And as she was reminiscing about growing up, y'all, Professor Hunter was sitting there like, yeah, I remember that. As they were showing the images of where she said, I know that street, I know that church, I know exactly where that is. It was just wonderful all around. And her son David, who can blow, and her son Damon, who is her what did he say he was? Her producer? Manager. Yeah, her manager, and has done all this other work. I mean, her range, every Dionne song for me is the favorite. Although I love Trains and Boats and Planes, but when she told this story about how the songs she didn't want, what were the ones she didn't want?
Alfie, she did not want.
She did not want to record Alfie. What was with Barry? What was it? Barry Gibb? What was the one that she did with him? Not Deja Vu.
No, where 42 people, was that Alfie?
Yeah, Alfie was the one, and y'all,
everybody recorded.
Everybody, 42. Sonny Rollins, and of course, I've heard the Sonny Rollins version, but of course, she let the world know last night, and I'm sure she said it before, I've never heard her say it, that she was so reticent that she said, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. Y'all spent all this money on this movie. And I thought about it. Why would the Aussies not want the British singer? But Michael Caine played the lead in Alfie. But anyway, so and she said, okay, I'm gonna go ahead. When we hear that recording, one take. I'm gonna sing this one time.
That's it. If you don't get it, too bad.
If you don't get it, too bad. All those subtle changes, the chords, one take. Dionne Warwick is a beast. But I'm trying. What was the? It wasn't Deja Vu. It was during the disco era. She made that song with Gibb. But anyway, she said, I don't want to sing this. He said it's gonna be your biggest hit. But yeah, she was just very candid, and it's beautiful to see Black people, but especially I'll say especially Black women with that kind of classy. Classy is too small a word. It's just that coolness. She is so cool.
Yeah.
You know, who tells a story about going to Europe and Marlena Dietrich throws all your clothes out and then takes you shopping at Chanel and East? I'm like, what?
But changed her whole. East Orange is can be hood, right? So
Yes.
so you are hood because it's all black. East Orange, black mayor, black, it's black. Everybody's black. There's hood sections and there's sections where people may have a little bit of coin. She comes from a coin area, but even in that there's a standard of behavior,
Mm.
and an expectation of how you're going to move in the world. I told you it was one of the best childhoods. I wish everybody had the kind of childhood I had. She said the same thing. I wish everybody lived in a neighborhood like that. She said the same thing, and everybody is black. So when we talk about these places, I know that they're manufactured because when they're unbothered by outside forces, we produce goodness.
That's right. We do. And that should be, like you said, she said that last night, and she said it. You said the same thing. You said, I wish everybody had this, and not every black body, not every white or Latino body. No, everybody, every child. Prof, what do you think is so difficult for some people? Why is that so difficult for some people to imagine and to want, not just for your children, but for all children?
I've been really thinking about this. Feedback now. I've been really processing the level of dis-ease that we have in this country and why. And I think, if you don't value yourself, if you don't love yourself, if you don't, and that's a tough thing because I think some of us don't even know what that means. If you don't see the possibilities for yourself, when you look around and other people are doing things, it's almost like an affront to you. So you want to bring everybody down so that you can feel like something instead of, and it's not even about doing the work, because as I said, I didn't do anything to have a good childhood other than my parents moved to 62 Lafayette Avenue when I was 4 on a street that was tree lined, and they had a bunch of kids from all over. My next door neighbors were from Honduras, down the street from Panama, people from the South, black folk all up and down, all for 10 blocks, 10 block radius, actually the whole East Orange, as I mentioned. And we would shut down the street, play kickball in the summer times, ride our bikes, hot peas and butter. It was just, and there was no thought of being black or being, anything other. Went to the school, or, on Springdale Avenue and Grove Street, all black principal, everybody. And it was never a thought that there was something that we needed to do other than be. And I think we have created this environment in this world is on purpose, where people have to contemplate their existence. And then it's juxtaposed to other people. And then you've been inundated with what you should have. And if you don't have it and other people have it, you want it, you're mad, and you think you're entitled to it if you are quote unquote white in this country, because that's what you've been fed. And then when you see other people living, swimming, having joy, you want to stop it because you're not happy. You don't like your music. You don't like your unseasoned chicken. You don't like anything. I mean, you've been fed a bill of goods that can't be delivered upon. So you don't want anybody to be happy. And the saying, Dr. Carr, is misery loves company. I think we're a miserable nation. Miserable. We need to not be miserable. I'm happy. I love being with you, by the way.
I love being with you, and I am happy as well. And that, my mom, you say, don't let them steal your joy. There are some miserable people in this country, and we all experience sadness, and we get angry, we get depressed from time to time. But it's in community that we're able to come together and to provide a balm for the spirit. And I'd say it's hard not to feel hatred for some of these people. But I think that there are emotions that are stronger than hate. There's pity, there's sadness, but that shouldn't stop us from stopping them. They must be politically broken, because because they are broken as human beings, it doesn't mean that they get to visit that pain on the rest of us. And the spate of cases that we saw in this last day of the court, the Supreme Court for the term, they are laced with the fear and the hatred of little people.
Yes. I just want to say one more thing before we jump in.
Please, by all means, we already jumped in. This is
it's math, right? So if I always use the roach analogy, but you can't let these things, you have to overwhelm them. I told you that Black Lucy called my radio show. We were in Galveston last week on Juneteenth, and we stopped at the actual place. One of the places, there's a mural next door, there's a museum, and they had the placard that told you what Juneteenth was, and next to it was a Black woman standing there in all white, and she was Black Lucy, representing the last enslaved person. And she said, when we walked up, there's 200 plus people, and then more people started gathering around us, and you stood up and talked. She said she was so overwhelmed, but she couldn't break character. She said, so she called up to thank us for being there, because the streets were empty before we got there. And I had wanted us to be there earlier, but we weren't for some reason. And we should have been there later because it was hot as hell. It was like noon in Galveston, and that sun was sunning. But we were there, gathered around, huddled around, trying to listen, packed in. And she said she started crying. And then some Nubians took pictures and they posted them, because I was standing in the back because I had already had the experience. So I wanted everyone to have the best experience. So I didn't even see her. And she listens to the radio show. She called in and she said, I just started crying and I wanted to hug y'all. I wanted to come up and say hello, but I couldn't. But in that moment, I realized that that's the thing. The whole town, when we were on the beach, people were disturbed. We disrupted. We showed up. We were large. We were not loud. We were silent and large, but loud in our community. And it disrupted the atmosphere, because joy is revolution, but also community, and the knowing that, oh, these are some people I ain't gonna be able to mess with. No, you will not. You will not. And that is an energy that we have to all possess, but it requires numbers. The way the ants gather around and build whole underground nations, but they do it together. And the things we can do underground and above ground require us to know that we can do it. And I think they've been trying to beat it out of us that we can't do anything, that we're less than, that we don't come from anything. And if you are a parent that says that because you've heard that and your grandparents have told you that, and it gets passed down, that too gets passed down, enough. And just say it every day, even if you don't believe it, say it till it becomes true. And then find your group. And if it's here, great. If it's in Nubia, if it's on YouTube, I have completely sanitized. I want to say my YouTube channel. I want to say hello to y'all. It took me 4 years, Dr. Carr, but I'm in them comments like it's a job, like I'm getting paid to weed out you come in with the nonsense, you are getting out of here. I banish you after I engage, do a little back and forth so I can show everybody what it looks like to be gathered, and then you get banished. You don't have to be here. It's okay. This is goodness. Go someplace else and bother people. And it's not about disagreement, because we disagree on things all the time as human beings, but love requires something of us to come in with some civility and some understanding that we are in this together, and we're not going to create this kind of discord, and we're going to expect more and hold people accountable, which is also love. Step your game up. It's okay. You can do it. That's all I want to say. All right.
That's right. Well, before you we'll go to the next thing. We have been, for the last several days, in the wake of the New York mayoral primary, been grappling with something that's emerging that perhaps gives us a peek into two things. One, the thing that unsettles those who are perfectly fine with ruling over other people and managing our lives as long as they're in charge. And the other thing that it might give us a peek of a window into is the possibility of real-time change not just demographic change, but perhaps even political change. I mean, and I know you've been fielding calls now, just day after day on this, beginning with the day of the announcement of, the first round. And of course, they haven't finished counting, but we've all been talking about it nonstop. Any thoughts about what's going on?
Yes, I am excited. I'm so excited. I was thinking about Gary Chambers in Louisiana and the level of frustration because people, again, they have sowed the seed that you cannot do it. You have numbers. New York, I don't know if New York is progressive or socialist or whatever, but I know people are tired of being unhoused and not having enough money and having their rent be too damn high. There was a whole guy that ran on a rent is too damn high agenda. I was like, yes, you're tired of not having enough. You're tired of the filth. You're tired of all of the, you're tired of the police acting like they're freaking Gestapo. You're tired. And so this young man, Mamdani, offers the possibility. Now, none of these politicians are perfect. And I think, again, we have been conditioned to deify and pedestalize folk. They are tools to get you what you need. But you are required to show up for yourself and elect people who, if he can't do all of the things, he's going to do some of the things. And it's going to be more than the things that ain't getting done now. So, and then we can force him into forcing them because he's a part of the assembly and the governor. Now everybody gets exposed. You get to see who the problems are because he has promised a lot of things that require other people to participate. And if they don't, now you know what to do next. I'm excited. And I don't want us to get bogged down in the details, whether he was with Kamala or not Kamala, whether he likes black people, don't like. I know for sure that Trump didn't like black people, period. But y'all worried about whether Kamala was black enough. She blacker than he is. And that shouldn't even be the litmus test. Can she do the things that you want her to do? And can you push her to do them? Can you protest her into action? Can you protest them into action? And the answer in this case is yes, you can. So
Absolutely.
I hope people show up in November. I was a little disturbed by seeing a display yesterday of folk showing support for Eric Adams as I walked the streets of Harlem. And I said, man, it is so filthy here. And then you go downtown and it's not. Eric Adams, that's your responsibility to make sure at least the place that black people live is pristine. And you can do that. You can do that. Why aren't you doing that? I was so, okay.
Yeah, you said that while we were there walking in Harlem after the show. Yeah, Eric Adams is a political clown and a stooge. If he might get angry at that, but certainly his behavior over the last year, coming to Washington D.C. to coolly negotiate between the thighs of Donald Trump for some relief, and Emile Beauvais, a thoroughly unqualified stooge who Trump has nominated to be on the Federal Court of Appeals. When he was at the Department of Justice, he lied under oath this week. Hopefully it'll come out at some point, when he said that, there was no pressure on him and he didn't make any political decision to not charge Eric Adams. I think we're all clear what that is and isn't. But yeah, I mean, I saw those same images of people lined up as Eric Adams announced his candidacy, many of them wearing the same shirts, which of course speaks to the money that is already being poured in. And shout out to all the super rich. And there's a reason why the phrase "eat the rich" has been around for some time and it's kind of reemerging in public consciousness. You people are enemies of our common humanity. And for Adams to meet with them in the wake of the primary the other night, and for them to not only meet with Adams, but to be very public about the fact that they're going to pour millions or more into this election, speaks to two things. Number two, it speaks to their impotence. They should call their friend Elon Musk and so they can see just how little money makes a difference. It's the millions he wasted in Wisconsin when people came out and voted the person he didn't want to be on the Wisconsin Supreme Court into that seat. Although, footnote, she was a white woman. She's not a Muslim Indian Muslim, born in Kampala, Uganda. So, I mean, there is that. You can never underestimate the power of racism. You can certainly ask the the vice president, Kamala Harris. But that's number two. Shows you just how impotent they are. They think they can buy an election, and I think they're going to be so disappointed in a few months. But the number one thing it shows is that when they drop pretenses, they drop all pretenses. They broadcast this on the front page of the New York Times and all over commercial news and entertainment media. Mamdani won. How do we stop him? I thought y'all was Democrats. And I want to thank all of them, because there are people who mistake supporting candidates for policy reasons, which is what we should always do. Politicians are not your friend. Even if you like them, they're not your friend in office. People like to reduce support for candidates to popularity contests, almost like we're watching sporting events or voting in American Idol, as opposed to being clear-eyed about the fact that of the two major political parties in the United States of America, one of them has, through historical circumstance, serendipity, deliberate choice making. I'm thinking now specifically about everything from the assaults on the white primaries in the courts. And as we were in Texas last week, I got a chance to speak with Al Green earlier this week. Of course, he filed another motion to impeach that was tabled, included, but I don't get too deep into that. But Al Green was bringing up Dr. Nixon, who was a dentist in Texas. In fact, I saw his picture, as I said last week, when I went over to the African American library in the old Gregory School in Houston. Dr. Nixon was a dentist who became the lead plaintiff in Nixon versus Allwright, and Al Green and I were talking about that and the importance of those Black lawyers in Houston specifically who fought back. But we can go back to the 1930s and 40s, and then up into the 1950s and 60s, when Black folk used the Democratic Party to break the back of political disenfranchisement. And of course, the white nationalists who had thoroughly populated the Democratic Party fled, first in a trickle and then in a flood, to the Republican Party. So let me state this once and for all, because you got some folks who would consider themselves radicals who just don't, I think they're being disingenuous, maybe even a little intellectually dishonest, when they commingle the idea of supporting candidates in one political party for somehow being having fealty to their party. And that's simply not the case. That's never been the case. It shouldn't be the case for any of us, but unfortunately it is for too many of us, which speaks to what you were saying in terms of Eric Adams, I think, at this moment. But I'm saying all that to say that political parties are delivery systems for power. And the folks in New York City who are now going to dump millions into a failed politician, a caricature, a human joke of a politician, are doing so despite the party label they are most commonly affiliated with, because the only thing they're interested in power, and that is power. And that's the only thing we should be interested in. So yeah, Zohran Mamdani, young brother, 33 years old, still getting his legs under him in terms of, reaching the constituency that he'll have to turn out. A lot of volunteers on this campaign, a lot of organizing. Did not speak to, generally speaking, the older Black voters, the ones that show up all the time. A mistake, I wouldn't go so far as to call it a mistake, because ultimately they didn't really need those voters in the numbers that would be required had they not had the other folk. I will say that it is something I think we'll see him improve on as the weeks and months go forward. He's already got an A game when it comes to political ads. I mean, watching him go through the bodegas with the egg and cheese sandwiches and connect that to taxes and connect that to public services and where money goes.
Tish James was right there. Right there.
Tish James, no joke. In less than a minute, now you know his GD name. I said, okay, Tish James. And when she stood there and said, "It's over," with that New York. It's over. I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to be quite a ride. And again, politics is not popularity contest, but it's important for us to be smart now at the end of June 2025 and to realize that all politics is local, which is kind of a truism. We say it all the time. But in the case of New York, and one of the reasons I love going to New York is because when you walk the streets of New York City, you see the world. And that's what frightens the hell out of white nationalists. You know, because at the end of the day, every white nationalist should be given complimentary. We could raise a little money and give it to them. They should be wearing shirts in the United States. You know, I mean, the first shirt, the versus shirt was Detroit versus everybody. I think it should be white citizens versus everybody. White citizenship, rather, versus everybody. The concept of white citizenship. This is a white man's country. Think about the 19th century politicians who said that. To think about the spate of Supreme Court decisions this month, ending with the end of this week, the assault on birthright citizenship and the idea of universal injunctions. The idea that the goal of this current Supreme Court, this neo-Confederate Supreme Court, is not only to roll back the 20th century, but to roll back Reconstruction. So much so that they are bold enough now to talk about it openly. And you would think that an American Negro, a servile, and you know, I don't call myself a descendant of slaves because my people were not slaves. They were human beings who were human trafficked and captive. But I'll make perhaps an exception in terms of a racialized for Clarence Thomas, because Clarence Thomas is indeed a descendant of a slave. He has a slave's mentality. And he wrote a separate concurrence yesterday, which I thought was interesting. A 5-page concurrence, Amy Coney Barrett, the majority opinion in the case, Trump versus Casa, the so-called birthright citizenship case, which really wasn't about birthright citizenship yet. The substantive question of as to whether or not being born in the United States of America makes you a citizen automatically, the 14th Amendment question, is still working its way through the courts. What was decided yesterday was whether or not a district court judge can issue what is called a universal injunction, meaning wherever that district court judge is, Maine, California, Texas, Michigan, whatever she does from that bench, you remember the so-called Muslim ban, the beginning of the first reign of terror of Donald Trump, the opinion that was issued applied nationwide. Well, what the Supreme Court said yesterday is they can't do that. That if you ask for an injunction to enjoin an executive order going into effect, the judge's decision only applies to you. So everybody who wants to challenge it either has to do one or two things, either has to file separately for themselves or join with other people who are similarly harmed or who they are arguing is similarly harmed and form a class. Classes have to be certified. You have to go. And so, of course, we know because when you read Sonia Sotomayor, as I said, Coney Barrett's was about 26 pages. Thomas had a concurrence of 5 pages. Sammy the Bull Leto, the Christian soldier, had a 4-page concurrence. Beer Kavanaugh wrote 12 pages. And then the heavy hitters, Sonia Sotomayor, who read a summary of her dissent from the bench. She's been doing that recently, which is to understand that justices rarely read dissents from the bench. She's sending a very important, very powerful message when she does that. And she's done that more than once now.
What's the message?
Well, Sonia Sotomayor is deeply concerned about the rule of law in the United States of America. She's not going to be quiet about it. The message she is sending is that I am aware and we are aware that what these people are doing has nothing to do with the law. They are literally making up law. Neil Gorsuch sat his ass on the bench earlier this week in the South Carolina case where the hillbilly horde legislature in South Carolina is stopping people from getting health care from Planned Parenthood, when the plain language of the Medicaid statute says that any provider, a person can get their health care from any provider who is receiving these federal funds at the state level. Neil Gorsuch said the word any is ambiguous. Can't make it up. But Sonia Sotomayor is like, y'all making this ish up. You're just making it up. You're not reading the statute. You now are pursuing a political agenda. And she's not playing. So over 44 pages, she spread her dissent. And then right behind her was Ketanji Onyeka Brown Jackson at 26 pages. So Sotomayor's dissent and Brown Jackson's dissent, both of them were longer than no, I'm sorry, that's not true. That's not true. Brown Jackson's dissent was 22 pages. So just a little short of the majority opinion. Call me Barrett, they know what they're doing. But I guess what I'm saying is it is an attempt to place white citizenship over everything and everybody. So it's literally white citizens versus white citizenship versus everybody. Now, of course, what Sotomayor also did in her dissent was lay out a roadmap, because in the majority opinion, Comey Barrett said that this opinion will go in, I'm sorry, the rule allowing, not the rule, reversing the lower court opinion, which froze Donald Trump's ability to send people out of the country, because he claims, Stephen Miller really talking through him claims that because one or both of your parents came to the United States illegally or undocumented, that you, even though you were born here, your citizenship is no good. Well, through executive order, Trump wants to start deporting people. And what Comey Barrett said is, as the district court and the court of appeals said, no, we're going to freeze that until the underlying question of whether or not you are a citizen or not is resolved. And for 150 years, the law has been clear. Well, not quite 150 years, but the Kim Won-Art case was the late 19th century. It's been clear, consistent, time after time. You're born here, you're a citizen. So it shouldn't be an issue, although this court, it may be an issue. But what Comey Barrett said was, we're disagreeing, writing for the 6-person neo-Confederate majority. What she said yesterday was, I don't care what the district court says. We don't care what the court of appeals says. We're reversing that. And you can go and do this and as the substantive issue works its way to us. In fact, we're going after, and this is what I'm saying, birthright citizenship was the pretense and may ultimately be the story as well. But the harm was in the process of telling them they could do it. They said, and no federal court except us, the Supreme Court, can issue a nationwide injunction. So if you go to court and you get an injunction in Louisiana and this person in Texas is in the same condition, they got to go to court in Texas. In fact, that injunction applies to you in Louisiana. What does that mean? That means that somebody else, they snatch them, they got to go to court in Louisiana. What are you doing? That's what Sotomayor is saying. What are you talking? That's impossible. And this is so clearly unconstitutional that you're saying judges can't issue a nationwide injunction over something that is going to apply nationwide and is clearly unconstitutional. Comey Barrett said, yeah, we got the numbers now, baby. We got Gorsuch. We stole that seat from Barack Obama, even though he nominated Merrick Garland. Again, Barack, you can't appease these people, man. When you get power, you got to punch them dead ass in their face unless you're not built like that. And I'm very sure you're not built like that. But either way, Gorsuch is a stolen seat. And Comey Barrett said, we can count. We got the numbers. We running to Boston on y'all. It is white citizenship versus everybody at this point. We're not just trying to roll back the 20th century. We're going back to the Reconstruction amendments. And so it was a powerful moment. And as far as I'm concerned, a very encouraging one, because Sotomayor, in her dissent, she gave them the roadmap for how to go about certifying a class. She said, this is how you would do it. And once you do that, then it can apply nationwide, we think. Although Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito, certainly, especially Thomas, anticipating that's what the people would do, he's writing his dissent like, don't try that, because then don't try to get around this, because then we're going to compel to act. Hey, man, the term is over. Get your ass in that $500 million motorhome that your masters gave you, and you and Jenny ride on out, or do whatever the hell y'all do. You may have been at Bezos' wedding, who knows? But either way, I guess not. That was yesterday. But either way, you shut your lips. You've embarrassed yourself and everybody in your bloodline, all the way back to the boat and before. You're an embarrassment. But he's like, yeah, don't try to get around this because we'll be compelled to act. And so the Muir's like, whatever, this is how you get around it. You have to certify as a class. And it didn't take long, because anybody paying attention knows that the lawyers who were going to challenge this again had already written up the filings. And it didn't take long, because while we were making our way to see Dionne Warwick, the American Civil Liberties Union of Maine indeed filed to certify a class action lawsuit over the executive order regarding birthright citizenship. So in other words, while the headlines are talking about birthright citizenship, and some people erroneously think that yesterday's Supreme Court ruled on birthright citizenship, they did not. It's coming back to court soon. And that's important to know. So as I thought about this today, is, all these events this week, the Trump versus CASA again being a marquee moment, but not the only moment. The intolerance in everything from South Carolina's legislature saying we're going to insert our will for the will of people who trying to go to Planned Parenthood for health care, simply because one of the things they offer, in addition to pap smears and mammograms and checkups, is abortion services. We're going to block access to federal dollars, which is illegal. But this week, the Supreme Court said, well, it's ambiguous when you say any provider. So it's not ambiguous at all. These old white men and some of these white women with them in South Carolina, in Columbia, South Carolina, the State House, decided that they're going to basically try to stop, and indeed succeeded with the Supreme Court's help in stopping people from using Planned Parenthood by starving Planned Parenthood. Other weak adults using their children with no shame as battering rams in their religious holy war, saying the Supreme Court ruled yesterday that if your child is in a classroom and there is LGBTQ content in the book or in the conversation that's being had, the lesson, your child can opt out of being in the classroom. Wow. Okay. Well, my child's sitting here, and you just said something about the American Revolution and didn't mention that more black people fought for the British or ran away than fought for just. My child needs to be excused. Huh? What? Yeah. I'm very excited about this because the whole thing got to be renegotiated, and I think we're getting closer to that. And so against that backdrop, seeing what happened in New York with the ranked choice voting coalitions, the other candidates saying leave Cuomo off your ballot. You can rank up to 5. Don't even put him on there. Cuomo losing. Then immediately saying, well, maybe I'll run as independent. And then the money boys getting together and saying, look, if you run and Adams runs, we might split the money. So you might decide, no, Cuomo, that's cool. We're going to go with this man who is a pure embarrassment. Both y'all embarrassments. But, since we're being shameless about it, we'll just push the Negro up. Because in part, there are black folk who do vote straight ticket. For some reason, James Clyburn found his way into New York to endorse Cuomo. I didn't realize that Congressman Clyburn votes in the New York primaries. I thought he was a registered voter in South Carolina, where he holds a congressional seat, but I guess I was wrong. Now he's riding with Cuomo, but not anymore because Cuomo's car stalled, brother. And go on back down there. God bless you. It's Congressman. He's done incredible work over the years. It's probably time to be quiet now, at least politically. But at any rate, this guy Zohran Mamdani, and I was telling you probably yesterday as we were talking, I kept wanting to call him Mahmoud, and it dawned on me after we got off the air Thursday why. His father, Mahmoud Mamdani, is one of the founders, one of the early founders of Transition, which is a very important Pan-African magazine. It was founded in the early 60s in Kampala, in Uganda. There was an Ugandan named Rajat Neogi, who was actually Bengali, who started this journal. And Transition is a journal still being published. And I was looking around, and I think all of my copies are in transition in storage. But Transition magazine is worth a read if you ever get your hands on a copy. Those early issues, you have people like Julius Nyerere writing in them, Tom Mboya writing in them, Wole Soyinka, Ali Mazrui, so many others. In fact, interestingly enough, Kwame Nkrumah is evoked in those early pages because they had the coup that got rid of Nkrumah in Ghana with the help of the CIA and other groups. And Transition talked about that. Ali Masri wrote a critical piece on Nkrumah, and then got gathered not only in the pages of Transition but other places. But I raised that because Zohran Mamdani, we had a caller yesterday on the air who's part of the Working Families Party, and I agree with Larry Daniel Favors. I agree with you, sis, that the Working Families Party is an excellent model for third-party politics. It is not it is a disruptor party, but it is one that knows how to create its own political agenda and then enter electoral politics, which is only one dimension of party politics, by the way. Don't get caught up on that, my radical friends. But enter electoral party politics in a way that will enhance their ability to see their agenda enacted. And in this case, it meant being in coalition with Mamdani. You don't retreat from the two-party politics system in places where it doesn't make sense to. You enter that system, but you enter it as your party, and you figure out ways to do that. They've been doing that in Minnesota for years, and in New York, we saw it play this week. But the brother called yesterday, and he kept referring to Mamdani as Kwame. And Lamont was a little bemused, and I could see it on his face. So as the brother was talking, I asked him to explain why you're calling him Kwame. And he said, yeah, because his name is the same as my son's name. My son's name for Kwame Nkrumah. And as I said on the air yesterday on Sirius, and so is Zohran Mamdani. Zohran Kwame Mamdani, his father, who is a professor emeritus at Columbia University now, Mahmoud Mamdani, named him for Kwame Nkrumah. So, you know, there are going to be black folk who will reject Mamdani because they're not thinking, because we've been suffused, and some of them will be victims of electoral capture, at least in the sense of being more old guard. And I'm not going to make this about age, but there will be those who won't think critically. But when a man is talking about universal free childcare in New York, making the buses free in New York, pumping money back into institutions that Eric Adams, a political clown, has eviscerated, public libraries and rec centers, things like that. He's talking about $30 minimum wage. And I'm really enjoying the tasty snacks of the billionaire class and the elite, so to speak, the economic elite, who are railing against Mamdani, calling him a communist. I'm not talking about the purebred racists, because they're part of the white citizenship versus everybody crowd as well, who are just going after him because he's Muslim and saying this will be the end of the society. Yeah, these are the people. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. That's one reason I love coming to New York, because you see some of everybody. And that's what scares people for whom the most valuable thing they have in their miserable lives is their whiteness. And they'd rather have their whiteness over health care, over a living wage. They'd rather have their whiteness over secure housing and the ability to enjoy their lives free from the type of economic structural inequality that they vote for year after year after year. Those people have to be crushed politically now. And Mamdani, there's no such thing as perfect politician. Politician's not your friend. It's all very interesting trivia in one way, what his name is and who his pops is, and his mother, who's a filmmaker. His mother was is the lady who made the film Mississippi Masala. Remember that film with Denzel Washington in Mississippi with he was African person and Indian lady and the love affair and all that. Mamdani has an interesting set of roots. He went to Bowdoin College. Bowdoin, of course, probably in terms of African people, the most famous graduate of Bowdoin is John Russwurm. Of course, Russwurm, who with Sam Cornish put together Freedom's Journal in 1827. So he's got that kind of abolitionist weft to it. But none of that means anything if it doesn't translate into real world, real life progress in the lives of regular people. And Mamdani is promising that. Can he deliver? We'll see. Can he win? Of course he can. Will they pump all the money in the world into Eric Adams to stop him? Absolutely. To the point where they're even saying we have to stop him. So, you know, the question of citizenship. We've talked about this many times, so we won't talk about it much today, but I do want to raise this. I was reading something that Adam Serwer wrote, the writer, and he wrote yesterday afternoon that what this current political formation, whether it be the executive branch with a pure madman whose mind is melting as we speak, Donald Trump, or MAGA Mike Johnson, the MAGA Muppet, who has conceded a co-equal branch of government to his master, trading his status as Speaker of the House of Representatives in for fealty to Donald Trump and Trumpism and white nationalism. The thing Adam Serwer wrote was that these people are taking direct aim at the Reconstruction amendments that they have never accepted. That's why Serwer calls them neo-Confederates. He's saying they're taking direct aim at the 13th, 14th, and 15th amendments. I don't enjoy Donald Trump. He doesn't irritate me either, because to irritate me, he would have to matter. And that man is so far beneath contempt in my mind that, and it's not entertaining. I don't even know if it evokes any emotion other than, I suppose there is an irritation that I'm getting seconds of my life are being taken away that I won't get back as long as I sit here and watch this. But as he vomited yesterday from public housing behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, he conflated the end of the Civil War date, and he said 1869, with 14th Amendment is supposed to apply to the children, the babies of slaves. I mean, if his family cared anything about him except as a delivery system for their own ambitions, they would make him stop talking. This is from
Carr. I don't want to, since you went to reach for the paper.
Yeah.
Your camera, according to the people, first of all, got you crooked, and it moves every time you move. So now we gotta turn our.
No, that's me. I know what to do. Okay. I think I know what to do. I have to. Dr. Wilkinson told me what to do last time this happened. I just need to do. Let me see. I need to take that off. I think that did it. That should do it. It may still be it. No, it didn't. All right, hold on. Gesture. That should do it. That will do it. Yep. It's going to be a little bit. That better?
Yes.
It's not going to move. That won't move now. Yeah, I had to go into the thing. I don't know what I did. I showed something, and that's what did it. Thank you. But yeah, if I was his family, I would try to perhaps shield him because he's clearly not well. But they don't care. Look at this. This is the dunce. As far as there's Eric. Look at Eric trying to look distinguished. This is from page 3 of the Financial Times today. You see the headline? President's son opens way to political dynasty. What does that mean? Of course, you know what they asked this clown.
That's hilarious.
Isn't it? They asked him, could you be president? He said, I could do it very effectively. What? I'm really busy and my father's trying to stop World War III. He's not running any of our entities. Just lying. And you see the staged photograph from Pennsylvania here over his shoulder by my finger. But at any rate, y'all gonna let this crime family drift.
All right, crooked again. Straighten out.
Wait, didn't it? It didn't straighten out. What the hell?
I don't know. Just.
Oh wait, this is wild. Hold on, let me see what's going on.
All right.
Wait.
Right. All right, and then back it up a little bit because we can see everything. Okay.
That's fine. I just need to get it
straight.
Yeah. See, this is what happens when you try to upgrade the camera, but you know what you're doing. So I did my little research, and everybody's in the Mbangi now, on the Nubia side, Bridget, saying they're covering Trump's diminished conditions while calling for an investigation about ex-president's health while in office. Yeah, of course they are, because they know that this is the game they're playing. In fact, there's this is the latest issue of the Boston Review. The cover, checks and balances won't save us now. Lisa Miller has the lead article, and then she's being responded to by a number of editors and other writers. And she's a professor of political science at Rutgers, and she's writing about the fact that checks and balances, we talk about checks and balances, and we need checks and balances, but that's not going to be enough. In fact, the name of her essay is The Dead End of Checks and Balances. What she says is that checks and balances, far from allowing the will of people to emerge in the United States political system, what checks and balances do is slow down popular will and really play into the hands of economic elites, political elites who are able to stop progress. And she said they can be and must be used to our advantage, checks and balances. But in order to do that, the element that we saw on display in New York, quite frankly, in this primary, must be the element that we all undertake. This is what, as you mentioned, Gary Chambers, our brother Gary Chambers, saying in Louisiana. I saw him talking to the NAACP the other day on this subject. We have to be involved. If enough of us get involved, you can overwhelm any of these apparatuses. Michael Mike Johnson is in Louisiana. He shouldn't be in the United States Congress. That's a matter of organizing people in his district. Say, well, what about gerrymandering? And yeah, that's true. Gerrymandering is a real issue. In fact, one of the cases that was decided yesterday, Supreme Court punted down the road until the next election cycle on the second Black congressional district in Louisiana. Remember the Milligan case out of Alabama, where they added another Black district in Alabama, congressional district. That's the district that Shamari Figures won. So he joins Terry Sewell in the federal legislature. Well, right now there's a Black congressional district in a state that is at least a third Black, Louisiana. I'm sure more than that. That's Representative Cleo Fields, who for some reason voted against the Al Green's motion, along with a bunch of other people, Hakeem Jeffries and other people. I want to see why Jamie Raskin voted against it, because I'd like to hear Raskin's thinking. I was saying that when we were on the air the other day. But at any rate, Cleo Fields is that Black representative in Louisiana, but they've added a second congressional district because the courts have determined that the hillbilly horde legislature in Louisiana discriminated against African people and violated the Voting Rights Act, racial discrimination. The Supreme Court was supposed to weigh in on that in this term, and instead they decided that they would punt to the next election cycle. So that district will remain in place. So we should see somebody else come to the federal legislature of African descent. Now, of course, skin folk ain't always kinfolk. Shout out to Eric Adams. And we understand that. But what we're seeing is that as people get organized, as people go to the polls, as people get involved, you can literally use the checks and balances system to your advantage to the degree that you can use it to your advantage, because as Professor Miller says, it does have its limits. But it's important to understand that rogue white nationalist states are out here depriving people of basic rights, of basic ability to take care of themselves. As I said in South Carolina case, no access to health care from your chosen provider. Gorsuch making up the law, as Sotomayor says. But if you don't like the subject being discussed, hide behind your hateful religion and use it as a First Amendment excuse to take your child out of a classroom. They are wilding on every level. It's white citizenship versus everybody. What is the lesson? The lesson is clear. Protect whiteness in every way. This is done through a moneyed white elite. This is what Miller is writing about, who relies on a captured apparatus of checks and balances to thwart popular social policy and programs. In other words, you ask people, would you like to see universal health care? No, I think people should. Okay, would you like to see? Yeah, I would like to have some public option at least. Okay, what about you? Yeah, the majority of people in this country want a public option. Even if they say they don't want everybody to have all the same health care, and I don't know why you could do that, but fine. The United States, the only major country in the world that calls itself a democracy where they don't have universal health care of some form. And that's because the checks and balances system allows people to buy politicians so they can lobby them and block it at the state level, at the local level, and certainly at the federal level. The courts, they can make sure that they elect politicians that stack the courts to have people rule very narrowly and try to undermine it. Even as we see this week that the Senate parliamentarian is like, you can't be tacking on all this stuff. It has nothing to do with the budget to your big BS bill. And now John Thune, the Republican leader of the United States Senate, has a decision to make. He says he's not going to break protocol, because protocol is when the Senate parliamentarian tells you it's illegal, you are supposed to say, okay, I can't do this. Now, so far, it looks like that's going to hold, but it might not. You have a man who is possibly the stupidest United States senator and quite possibly the stupidest legislator to ever be in the federal legislature, Coach Tommy Tuberville out of Alabama, who is threatening the Senate parliamentarian. Also, a couple of these hillbillies who are saying, that she's a Democratic shill. I mean, that's the, the common the common rhetoric. Of course, it's not true. But my point is that those people with money can capture the apparatus, whether it be the courts, whether it be the legislature, whether it be the presidency, and they can gum that up. But most people in this country want some form of health care to be available to people at low cost. After all, we do pay taxes. They want to have a living wage. They also want to organize in terms of collective bargaining and organized labor. All these things have been on the rise, but the checks and balances system can thwart popular social policy and programs with majority support. And it also works to kind of prep, to cultivate, to shore up a perpetually aggrieved racial minority, and do that with sufficient numbers to protect the moneyed elite from mass opposition. What does that mean? That means that the people who are more concerned if there's a book in the school library where says, I have two moms, and you are obsessed about that, even as you working 4 jobs and still can't pay the damn bills. But that's the thing. Your people are propping that up because it gives them a vote. It gives them a way. It gives them a wedge to gum up the checks and balances work. But meanwhile, the world turns. You know, on the way up yesterday, I got a copy of the latest foreign policy magazine. This is the July edition, the July-August edition, under the headline, Who Needs Allies? Who Needs Allies? Uh-oh. Yeah, this is funny. This thing, I don't know why it looked like it moved. Okay, that's just the phantom in my mind. Corey Shake has the first essay in here. It's called Dispensable Nation, America in a Post-American World. It did move. That's wild. I'm gonna stop showing stuff. This is here we go. Crazy. America in a Post-American World. And it's interesting because in this article, it talks about how the other countries in the world are clearly making moves to elide the United States of America, to go around it. That's not going to happen tomorrow or next month or next week. Even as we see the markets, I think it was in today's Financial Times. Yeah, U.S. stocks hit record as tariff threat wanes. Gain of 23% since Liberation Day. Mideast and China deals fuel rally. That headline is speaking to the fact that, remember, Trump and we're making deals and we're going to make deals. Ain't no deals being made. Taco man. Trump always chickens out. And the markets are now understanding that for all that crazy talk and all that rhetoric and all that stuff that he be saying, okay, this is bothering me now to no end. I could just stop the camera because I don't know what is going on here. Y'all give me a second because I don't understand why this thing is all right, let's do it like that. Let's see what happens. All right, if I don't move, then it don't move. Hopefully it's gonna keep moving. All right, but the tariffs are just that, a threat, and they're not gonna take effect in part because what Trump is realizing, and it's following me. All right, y'all, what we're all experiencing in real time is my technological ineptitude. So let me do it like this. I'm trying to see. All right, somebody in the Nubia or in the YouTube side. Look at that. That's interesting. Y'all see me playing around with this thing, right? All right, here we go. If I stay still, maybe it'll be all right. This is following my eyes. At their points, whoever put this equipment together, maybe they're on me right now. Who knows? But what Corey Shake is arguing in Dispensable Nation, America in a Post-American World, consistent with the idea that the markets are going back up, is that these other countries now are creating workarounds. As I said last week, I said on the air this week, they just finished up the China-Africa Summit. Trade with Africa is soaring past $300 billion, and it's on the great rise. NATO, you saw Bozo over there talking about everybody got to pay 5%. And the countries, generally speaking, Spain is a nominal exception at this point, are raising their military budgets. But as is being discussed here in this magazine, including Celeste Wallander has the second article entitled Beware the Europe You Wish For, the Downsides and Dangers of Allied Independence. The Europeans now are they put some rules in place in the EU to say that for some of this stuff that we're purchasing in terms of military equipment, we're not going to buy from the United States. We're going to buy from European providers. And Canada now is entering a couple of deals with the EU to purchase more equipment for their military to remilitarize. Anytime you start seeing Germany leading the charge, you understand that the United States is isolating itself, and it's doing it in a way that will ultimately accrue to weakening the United States. The United States is going to be a major power for the foreseeable future, decades, maybe a century, who knows. But what it's not going to be is the center of the old order, the post-World War II order, the Bretton Woods order, the International Money Fund, the World Bank, the United Nations. Because what you see is by pushing pure nativism and trying to withdraw from the world, two things are emerging. Number one, and this is really the only one, but number one, you can't withdraw from the world. You're too deeply intertwined with the world. And number two, a minor number two, what you are doing, however, is creating more and more openings and pathways for other countries to work around you. If you could close off the US market for everyone, guess what? The people here would scream bloody murder, because that's when you would find out how much of what we consume every day comes from overseas. That's when you would find out how much of the technology we consume, the things that are in our machines and our devices, in our cars, in the planes, in the phones, in the computers, how much of that stuff comes from overseas. The United States is completely intertwined. The United States doesn't have to be the leader of the world, the reserve currency of the world as it is now. Those workarounds can ultimately lead to at least a bipolar world, and that would be China and the United States, and maybe at some point a multipolar world, because the EU is increasingly tired of bozo vomiting over everything, and the G7 and you going and asking for your buddy Putin who don't give a damn about you. It's very interesting. So I would encourage people to get this latest issue of Foreign Affairs, because it speaks to the world that continues to turn. Sheikh writes this in her article. She says, no dominant power has ever had so much assistance from others in maintaining its dominance than the United States post-World War II. What does that mean? That means that it made sense to the Western powers to prop up the United States, to strengthen the United States as the hegemon of sorts, because it also served their interests. But guess what? If the United States is not going to serve that role, then let's do it for ourselves. This is for the soft white nationalists out there, and for the black folk who are nativists, speaking maybe even some of the FBA, ADOS, whoever you want to call people, who think that their reparations is going to come from their master. When you go for nativism in the United States of America, you're weakening your arguments. You're weakening your arguments for self-determination. You're weakening your arguments for some form of leverage, because the strength of people in the United States and the ability to influence social movements around the world and to benefit from social movements around the world that influence U.S. domestic policy comes in solidarity, comes in connection. It doesn't come from isolation. If you cut yourself off from the rest of the world, the nativists get a bit of an upper hand. And just imagine that. The birthright citizenship case is something that we really have to consider. Again, talking about that this week, we were on the air, John Boyd, the black farmers, he and his wife, talking about, everybody's a farmer and you got to get involved and join the black farmers. And we're talking about that. And he said something I thought was very important. And this goes to all the lawyers out there. And I'm going to bring this up with Sister Sherilyn Eiffel, Professor Eiffel at the 14th Amendment Center at Howard. John Boyd said, I want to see somebody sue here in the United States. He said he wants to sue. He wants some lawyers to help him sue the United States and these white Afrikaners. That's redundant. These Afrikaners who came to the United States with public dollars, getting subsidized, jump the line on immigration, will be subsidized with land and equipment from the land bank of the United States Department of Agriculture, all because they are white South Africans. Now, the argument the government will make is they're being persecuted. There's no evidence of that. In fact, the evidence is to the contrary. But it's clearly a racial categorization. So as Boyd was saying, and I agree with him, if racial categorizations are illegal, they're illegal. Now, the thing that has to be parsed in that is that, and I've been threatening for the last 10 years, I tell my law students every semester, I'm going to draft a law review article that I want y'all to publish at Howard Law Review. And the working title is No Standing for Whiteness. Because whiteness has legal standing in this country. We saw it on display yesterday. Whiteness isn't named, you see. This is the problem that they have with the Civil Rights Act of 1866. The early attempt by the Republican-controlled Congress to cement the victory of the Civil War with Reconstruction, the act that was vetoed initially by Andrew Johnson, the act that precedes the 14th Amendment, the act that says that everybody born in this country is a citizen and everybody has the right to be treated equally. And those Civil War amendments to the Constitution, 13, 14, and 15, were accompanied by federal legislation that was very explicit that people in this country be treated the same as or given the same rights as a white man. They literally say that. And not the Reconstruction amendments, not the constitutional amendments, but the federal legislation. And that is interpreted over the following decades by the federal courts, the Supreme Court, to say that even white people have the right to be treated as a white man. Well, that was a legal sleight of hand, as I told Eric Foner a couple of years ago at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. We were talking about that. I said, whiteness, the power of whiteness lies in its invisibility. The villain of the piece in terms of political movements in the United States of America and in the Western world generally is citizenship. Citizenship, meaning whether you're a citizen or not, is going to determine whether you have rights. That is deeply flawed. And in fact, the 14th Amendment says that it applies to all persons. No person shall be deprived of due process of law or equal protection under the law. It's going to be interesting because since Neil Gorsuch will just make ish up, any is ambiguous, he could say person is ambiguous, and don't be surprised. But I saw as a backdrop to this, as I told Foner, the idea that whiteness must be named must be, in terms of a legal strategy, something that we pursue at some point. You can't just keep saying race only in terms of non-white people, or what would be called legally, at least for the foreseeable future in this country. That's not true. For the near future, because very soon this is not going to be the case, you can't just use the word minority to refer to all non-whites, because in a moment, whites will be a minority in a plurality in which no one has a majority, and whiteness must ultimately be named. And maybe the case to name it would be these funky white nationalists who were airlifted out of South Africa and then come here with taxpayer money that after 2 settlements and legislation, the black farmers can't get their money, but you're going to give money to the apartheid farmers, the apartheid era farmers. Simply not going to fly. So the world is continuing to turn. And as Corey Sheikh said, the rest of the world was propping the United States up in part because it gave a form of stability, not without problems. Ask everybody who was subject to a coup d'etat in their country. Ask people. Come on, son. Right. Ask people who found themselves subject to carpet bombing by the United States of America. Ask people whose governments were undermined or propped up, depending on whether the United States and the West liked the dictator or not. So it's not without problems. In fact, it has a lot of problems, but we can overwhelm all of that by organizing at the local level, like what happened in New York, at the national level, as what we're going to see as these class action lawsuits are filed, and everybody who is threatened by the possibility that that Bozo will put a completely unconstitutional and illegal executive order out saying that you're not a citizen of the United States of America, and these class action lawsuits will go a long way toward thwarting that. Don't care what Clarence Thomas writes, ignorant person. All of this speaks toward the importance of organizing, of building together. The current wave of Supreme Court decisions signal a calculated effort to roll back those Reconstruction-era gains, a neo-Confederate effort. So we won't stay on long this morning because, like I say, we both been up almost around the clock. It's funny, when I walked back in, I realized, this is crazy. I think it's looking. Is it following my eyes? And I've done everything I thought I could do. Let me see if I can do this. Oh, maybe that'll do it. Maybe that'll do it. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But I want to just spend a couple of minutes, and then maybe we'll pause for today, because I'm really looking forward to Monday night. We'll finish the final conceptual category on Monday night. We had a very lively conversation this past Monday in office hours. This week, we are going to spend our time with Tony K. Bombara's interview with Claudia Tate, the great writer Tony Cade. And so if you've got a narrative subscription and you're in Nubia, come on in on Monday night. It's quite something. People don't believe me when I say that we have 1,000 people on Monday nights or 2,000 people on Monday nights having conversations, reading books in conversation. They say that's not true. So y'all should subscribe and join in and see. It's like, wow, really? And of course, last night, your sister Ebony out of Wilmington, she and her mom there for the Dionne Warwick concert, and spotted you, Professor Hunter. We standing there, we in back of us. She said, I'm and if you're here today, Ebony, I hope if you got up like we did, all right, sis, because she said, I am Nubia since beta. I think that's a thing, Prof. I mean, I ain't trying to say there need to be another t-shirt, but if I probably met in the last month since I was down in Birmingham, probably maybe a dozen people who said they are Nubia since beta. I think I'm like, Nubia since beta. I'm like, okay, I see you. But as I said, Monday night is going to be good. We're going to finish that up. Then we're going to get into our second framing question of our 6 framing questions, part 2 of the Introduction to African States course. But a couple of final things. The model that we have, the work that we are doing, really has set us up so beautifully as white citizenship versus everybody steps up its attack on its very own institutions. I'm sure everybody saw the news yesterday that the University of Virginia's president, James Ryan, told the board overseeing the school, the trustees, that he will resign because Trump and them are pushing him, Pam Blondie and the Justice Department, and I know it's Biondi, but I like Blondie, are pushing University of Virginia to look into its diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. And they pushed UVA to say, you need to get rid of your president. So he quit. Now I've got to check with my sister, Claudrina Harrell, Dr. Claudrina Harrell, one of our brilliant historians of African American memory keepers, academics in African American history, also labor history. For a time, she was the chair of the history department of the University of Virginia. And she and I go back to when she was an undergraduate at Temple University and I was in grad school. Claudrina's just flat foot brilliant. And also in the Big Five Hall of Fame in Philadelphia, because she was one of the best 2 guards in the history of Temple University athletics. And when she walked into the athletic director's office after completing her 3rd year and beginning to break scoring records with another year of eligibility left, and said, thank you very much. I've completed my academic requirements. I'm now headed off to Notre Dame for a PhD in history, and left the office, and everybody with their mouth on the floor. Oh, you thought I was an athlete? You didn't see student in front of? No, I'm going to get a PhD, which she did in history. Shout out to Claudrina Harrell and her mom, Jacksonville, Florida, best. But I got to ask Claudrina about this situation at the University of Virginia. They made this man walk the plank. They have also sent one of those damn dear colleague letters that come from the Department of Education to the University of California system. I've never met the brother, Dr. Drake, Michael Drake, who was president of Ohio State University for a while, black dude. But they come for the scalps of more college presidents, even as they pancake the endowment, try to pancake the endowments of Harvard and Yale and Johns Hopkins, and go after the federal grants. A long article by one of my former students who's doing some excellent work. I very much commend folk to read this article. Jasper Smith, good sister who's writing for the Chronicle of Higher Education now. Jasper just published an article this week on the tens of millions of dollars that historically black colleges and universities are in line to lose as a result of federal grants being taken from them in this blitz against quote unquote DEI. So North Carolina A&T is about to lose, I think Jasper said it was either 16 or $24 million. Howard is on the hook for about $12 million. These are science grants. Understand? These are grants that pay graduate students, that pay faculty, that buy equipment, that engage, that allow undergraduate students to undertake intensive summer training, exchange programs, you name it. Okay, all that money gone, and for some HBCUs that becomes deeply crippling. See, Harvard would miss $12 million. Howard would miss $12 million very differently. You see, and when you start talking about money like that at HBCUs, especially the smaller HBCUs, think about the ones like Xavier in Louisiana, who are really deeply anchored in the sciences. When you start talking about a haircut off the NSF grant, a haircut off the NIH grant, the National Institutes of Health grant, you're talking about real money. And so, you know, as this is happening, and I bring this up for this reason, what we have built cannot replace historically Black colleges and universities, but what we have jailbroken is the idea that you've got to go to a university and pay tuition in order to be involved in the kind of study and dialogue that we're doing. That is absolutely untrue. And so as we think about this question of white citizenship versus everybody, we understand that we must arm ourselves now with facts, with information, with knowledge. We must become aware of what each other is doing. That's another reason that the Nubia space is so important. It's a clearinghouse, it's a network where we connect with each other. And so as we do that, we will be able not only to resist, but build the world that we want to see, first in our minds and then in our actions. And as this world continues to be renegotiated, we don't just come to the table with ideas, we come to the table with a compendium of real world success stories that we've shared with each other and a clearer interpretation of what else we can do through this steady process of study and communication. It's invaluable. Prof, I'm going to kind of wind up. I will say before we met up, I got to the city, and, you know, while we were in Texas, I think this was maybe Friday. It was either Friday or Wednesday. We interviewed Rob Edwards, filmmaker, producer, who has partnered with this group of Black folk to create this graphic novel on Robert Smalls called Defiant. I saw a copy, actually, where was I? Tuesday night. I was down at Black Star Network Studios. You know, Roland was out of town, so I covered the desk for him. And I saw, because he had interviewed Rob Edwards, and he had a hardback copy of the trade paperback. And so I'm very keen on this. I don't take nobody's books, nobody take my books. We all share and that's anything. And I asked Carol, I said, Carol, is Roland going to take their book? He said, yes, okay, leave it there. Put that book up, though, because I ain't seen that book nowhere. I've been in comic book stores in Texas, Pennsylvania, at Georgia. I've been looking for that book, and I told Rob Edwards I can't find it. So of course, when I came to the city, I went to my friends at Midtown Comics, and they didn't have it yet either. However, they did have the first issue of the single issues that they published late last year, small batch, to and now those 4 have been put together into the one graphic novel. So be on the lookout for Defiant, the story of Robert Smalls. And at the risk of making this doggone camera move again, this is, there it is, moved again. This is volume 1, issue 1. There's Robert Smalls, and there's Rob Edwards at the top, a lot with the rest of his people. The kind of, that's the great Robert Smalls. You see there, the group they put together, this Black group, is called Legion M. Legion M, they're going to make a movie out of Robert Smalls' story. But you know me, I'm skeptical, as you are and everyone else is. Don't mess up Robert Smalls. So, but Rob Edwards, in the interview, we really got into it. He has done a deep dive into the life of Robert Smalls. The first issue looks good. I read it. It's got his historically accurate. The artwork is off the chain. And I'm like, oh, this is very interesting. So keep your eyes out for Defiant, story of Robert Smiles. And shout out to my people at Midtown Comics, because as soon as I got off the bus, I made a beeline. I said, hold on, I had to go to 2. I had to go, like I said yesterday, Port Authority. Then I walked over to Grand Central Station, and my man's had this copy. And so he was like, oh, I got you. I said, okay, now I need the other 3, but just make sure that y'all stock the trade paperback. So
I think we should follow you to the bookstore. I think that would be.
Oh, that's a great. Oh,
I think when you texted me, I said, this man never to the follow. He was like, I'll be there. I'm going to stop at a couple of bookstores. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But I think that would be interesting. You know how people, Senyata has taken us into the grocery store, which has been phenomenal. Dr. Senyata Amen, those of you in Nubia, if you know, Maroon's Medicine Chest every other Sunday. She's taken us into the grocery store to teach us how to shop, what to look for, the labels and all that. I think following you into the bookstore is something that I can get done.
We could do that. Yeah, you know what? Let's do that. That will be fun. There's a book out. What's it called? Prose for the People. It's like a compendium of Black bookstores. It's very well put together. I must confess, given the number of people I know in the book, that I know. And I'm like, y'all asked me to write nothing in this book. Y'all know ain't none of y'all got a better book collection than me. I'm like, okay, I ain't mad, because when my book come out, all that'll be straight. But I'm saying that would be nice. We should go see Mama Nia down there in Atlanta. Go to Sankofa. Yeah,
I know we've been trying to get together a tour of CSI crime scene.
Yeah, and Angie just came. By the way, today is Angie Porter's birthday. Happy birthday, Angie. Yes. She just came back from Amsterdam. We're working on an article called CSI. We're gonna write a lot, but she called it CSI. She was in Amsterdam doing crime scene investigation at the Hague. So she got a whole story to tell about that.
We need to reconnect with her as well.
Absolutely.
To-do list. I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you. Don't she look good, y'all, for somebody who just got home a minute ago? No.
No, I slept. Unlike you, I actually get sleep. I'm gonna
go sleep in a minute.
Okay, all right. I need to do that. Everyone, get your rest, drink your water, move your body. We need you healthy. We need you healthy. We got a fight ahead of us. They're gonna try to do a lot of things, but they can't do it if we're together. Dr. Black showed that if we are shoulder to shoulder, it's hard to push us over.
That's right. Hey, on the YouTube side, y'all like, share, and subscribe, and spread the word, because it's funny. We were talking about this last night too. Everybody and their mama now got a microphone. Everybody, but our thing like a metronome, and you ain't letting no distractions get in the way, Prof. It's really quite.
I tried not to, but somebody's like, "Can you tell him about the camera?" I was like, "So you want me to distract him?"
No, that's fine.
You're right. But yeah, I mean, we listening though. We're okay. We can overcome this, and then you're gonna fix the camera next week or go back to the old camera.
I'm gonna have to go back. Yeah, I'm gonna fix it between now and then.
You getting too fancy.
No, I'm just trying to get a little bit better image. Look, I got the microphones too, but I just ain't put them on yet, because that's when we go out in the street. You told me which ones. You told me which ones.
Your beauty. You are, we here.
No, it ain't.
We're not here for that though.
It ain't that. Oh, I should mention too, because this time last week I was getting ready to go to the party, and Mariba Kelsey, they threw a hell of a party to him. So his son Mandibo, his daughters Reba and Romani, his grandchildren, his wife Mama Nyambi, everybody, they had a 100th birthday party for Mariba Kelsey that was off the chain. And you know what this Negro did? Let me say this. Now I should say this. I'm thinking about it now. Oh my God, do I have this book? He doesn't know about this book, but I'm gonna show y'all because it's an excellent. If I can find it. Oh, here it is. So there it is again. There it is again. Come on now, this thing is tripping. I'm gonna get it fixed. But on Saturday, they had the birthday party. People came from all around. It was good to see Mama Patsy Joe Hilliard, Baba Asa Hilliard's wife, his son Hakeem. There's some exciting news down the horizon on Asa Hilliard's private library. Stay tuned on that. I think everybody's gonna be very happy to hear about this news when they make the announcement. So keep your ear to the ground. But of course, at the end, they asked him to give some words, and he taught a lesson. That's what he always does. He said, we got to have unity and you got to agree to agree. And then he talked about it, right? But the next day, Sunday, he wanted, for his birthday, he said, I only want one thing. I want to go through my old neighborhood. So we got in this big kind of mini bus and toured Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is one of the older Black neighborhoods in Atlanta. In that neighborhood, the school that gave birth to what we now know as Clark Atlanta University was created. Krogman Elementary, which is where Baba Mariba went to school, one of the oldest public schools in the city. And then he went to high school, of course, under Principal Charles Harper at Booker T. Washington, which is where Martin Luther King went to school, who was behind him in school, by the way. But going through the neighborhood was really something, as he talked about the Black community, the tight-knit nature of the community, how he was raised, the churches of Pittsburgh. He's written a book about that, actually, and how we must now revitalize these Black communities. Well, when I got back here to the to DC, I had in the mail a book that I had ordered directly from the publisher by Augustus Wood called Class Warfare in Black Atlanta: Grassroots Struggles, Power, and Repression Under Gentrification. If there is one book on Atlanta that you want to read that also speaks to how Black elected officials can mess around and betray, even with the best of intent, the Black working class, this book by Augustus Wood, Class Warfare in Black Atlanta, it is very eye-opening. So to all these Black politicians who claim that you're helping Black people, but then you wipe out whole Black working class neighborhoods and bend over and kiss the ring of these white moneyed capital on the chance that you get to be a little bit of money, have a little bit of money. I ain't gonna name no names. It's Atlanta. Y'all can fill in the blanks. And to the Black politicians who would try to reverse that, maybe like Brandon Johnson in Chicago, or the other politicians like Mamdani in New York, no politician can change anything without the rest of us. And if we don't get behind these people, or not even get behind them, link arms, as you said, as Dan said, shoulder to shoulder with them, and many times run out in front of them and embolden them, then what do you expect them to do? What do you expect them to do? They're no different than any other politician. If you're out there by yourself, the money people are going to talk louder. But if you're out there with everybody, and I'm sorry, Eric, I don't care how much money your master gave you to stick all them people in t-shirts yesterday, it don't fool nobody. You're not going to be the mayor of New York, sir, if enough people decide that they're going to pick their future over your political future. It's just not going to happen. So anyway, Class Warfare in Black Atlanta, I do recommend this. I'm about 2 chapters in. I'm like, damn, I wish I had had this when I was on that bus with Bob Mariba, but that probably would have upset everybody, because you just see it. You see the kind of Black community that would produce a Mariba Kelsey, and then you see what happens when Black elected officials allow these moneyed interests to run over them roughshod, and they call it progress. So trains and boats and planes. Be quiet. Thank you. Love you. I'll see ya.
Trains and boats and planes are passing by. They mean a trip to Paris or Rome for someone else, but not for me. The trains and the boats and the planes took you away, away from me. We were so in love and high above. We had a starry wish upon wish and dreams come true, but not for me. The trains and the boats and planes that home.